Hi, my name is Micah Akulian, and I am a holistic and spiritual counselor. You can find my website in the link in the description. Um, and I want to share my experience of healing from ulcerative colitis. So I had ulcerative colitis, which is a autoimmune condition that affects your intestines. It's where your immune system attacks your intestines. And I had that for about 8 years. The symptoms of it are diarrhea, blood in your stool, fatigue, um, nausea, feeling weak and tired all the time. It's a horrible condition, very challenging to live with. A lot of pain, a lot of depression, anxiety, and really made my life hard to live. It was a hard 8 years of my life. Um, so I had that for 8 years, and I contracted, or I came down with UC. You don't contract it, but your immune system gets triggered and doesn't turn off at some point. So I came down with it after traveling to South America for a couple months, and I got sick in South America, but not really that sick. Just seemed like just regular traveler's illness, probably from the food or the water or something. And then I came back to the United States, and 5 months later is when it happened. But that whole 5 months, I noticed something was a little off with my digestion. And the first 2 weeks, it was just like a faucet, and after about a week, it turned into blood, and it was terrifying. I thought I was dying. I had no idea what was going on, and this is in 2001. Yeah, 2001. So and we didn't have the resources we have now in 2001. The internet wasn't fully up and running, and we didn't have all the information that we have now on the internet, and also the science just wasn't there. So at the time, I didn't have as many resources to understand what was wrong with me, and my doctors were just telling me that it was a condition I have to live with for the rest of my life, and that I should just take the medication and maybe consider getting parts of my colon taken out. And the whole thing was like a nightmare. It just seemed horrible. So for 8 years, I basically tried, for about 5 years, I tried everything that I could, and then I gave up. I did everything, all the herbs, acupuncture, therapy, what else did I do? Chiropractic. I went to a chiropractor who said that it was all in my spine, and maybe there's some truth to that, your nerve endings in your spine that connect with your digestion, but most of those things helped sometimes, but never actually took the root cause away. So after 8 years, the last 3 years of that time, I just kind of gave up, and I went into a real deep depression, which happened slowly over the 3 years. But at the end of those 3 years, so the end of the 8 years total, I basically came to a place in my life where I didn't want to really live anymore. It was so hard to just be alive, to get up in the morning and try and figure out what foods weren't going to make me sick. And that's the thing with UC and any digestive illness, is it becomes like this head trip where you're constantly trying to figure out what you can and can't eat, trying to you're second guessing everything you put in your body, and it creates this background anxiety and neuroses, really. So I was at this place of just wanting to give up. And at that point, I came across the teachings of Eckhart Tolle. My mom actually recommended me the book, The Power of it was Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. So I listened to that on my iPod, and it was beautiful. It's all about the ego, if you're not familiar. It's all about understanding how your mind works and recognizing that little voice inside of your head, which everybody has, this little voice that's constantly making comments about yourself and life around you. That little voice is not who you are. It's a conditioned experience, and it's part of the human condition that we try and understand the human world through thoughts and conceptualizing and categorizing things. So the mind basically takes the unknowable infinite experience of life and puts it into a little container that we can understand and grapple with, which helps for physical survival. It allows us to navigate the physical world. But those concepts also keep us very limited And so what I started to see with my ego is that a lot of my negativity and fear and judgments was coming from this conditioning and this voice that was in my head, whether I picked it up from my parents or the culture growing up. But it wasn't who I was. And I had these moments where I would like see that. And so for about 2 weeks I listened to this book, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, A New Earth. And I'd have these little moments over those 2 weeks where I'd started to see things more clearly. And like these just little bursts of like awareness and insight. And then something happened at the 2-week mark where I had a huge spiritual awakening, like total unraveling of my psyche and just breaking through all the mental noise. It was beautiful, it was amazing. And I kind of had like a breakdown. I'll probably share that in another video. But it was pretty dramatic. And yeah, so that whole experience, unraveling, a lot of crying, a lot of grieving, and then also this like unconditional love pouring into me, coming from my heart, just beautiful feelings of connection, feelings of well-being. My mind went really quiet for many weeks, kind of came back after like 3 or 4 weeks. But for those 3 or 4 weeks, I was like in this kind of blissful state. So after that all happened, I started to notice that my body was feeling different. And about 2 months after, I decided to stop taking my medication. So I've been on 16 pills of Azicol, I think it was called. It's a sulfur-based anti-inflammation medication. I had been on 16 pills a day for 8 years. And anytime that I'd miss a dose, my symptoms would kind of flare up. So I made a pretty bold choice to stop taking my medication after 2 months of this experience. And I just kind of felt in my heart and in my soul, I just knew that something had shifted. So I stopped taking the medication, and amazingly, my symptoms were totally gone. I was having like regular bowel movements. My digestion was like perfect, like it was before I even got sick. So I was like a little like hesitant, a little tenuous, but I just kept trusting my intuition. I stopped taking the medication, and yeah, that was the healing of ulcerative colitis. Now, in addition to the spiritual process that I went through, I had also been changing my diet basically for the whole 8 years. I'd been investigating dietary stuff, and the last like 6 months before the healing, I had made some pretty significant changes, totally cut out gluten, dairy, and sugar. And so I know that that was part of it. I feel like that the awareness, the intuition to do all that came at the right time, came in conjunction with my awareness expanding to the point where I was ready for the spiritual awakening. So they kind of went hand in hand. But I always want to share that because I think people in their healing process can get very fixated on one causality. Oh, it's physical, or it's emotional, or it's spiritual, when I think that it's all these things. And usually it's all these things. There's some people's healing stories where they just tweak their diet a little bit, they eat some more probiotics, and everything heals. And so maybe that's an indication that the spiritual, emotional, mental aspect of this is kind of minimal. So it really is just about kind of fine-tuning the physical. But for most people, there's some mental or emotional component of illness, and there's a process of like unraveling and healing all of that. So a little bit of backstory about the UC was that my father passed away when I was 12. He died in a car accident. It was a hit and run car accident. It was very sudden. He died on impact. And that was a really traumatic experience for me when I was 12 years old. I had very little resources at that age to deal with the pain and the all of it that I was going through. So I basically shut down. I like closed off. I took all that pain. I just squished it down, and I know that was part of the cause of the disease, was all of that repressed energy. Because as I was healing, I was feeling a lot of that grief that had been repressed for so long. I was just feeling deeply the stuff that I wasn't able to feel at the time. So for a lot of people, there is this component of decompressing or releasing unprocessed pain from the past. And that's part of the whole healing process. But it doesn't tend to happen until you start to unravel your ego, because the ego structure, all the concepts we have about ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves, it keeps all of that energy locked in place. So for instance, if you think of yourself as a very shy person or very your victim kind of mentality, that mental concept becomes like an identity, and you begin to actually feel attached to it. You feel like you are that idea. And so if you're to think of yourself as something other than that idea, it becomes threatening. You feel like you don't know yourself, you lose yourself, because your identity is wrapped up in the story you have of yourself. But as soon as you begin to see those thoughts are just conditioned patterns, and they don't actually represent the truth of you at all, it's just, well, it's one story about you, but you can change it at any point, then it frees up your energy to move and to be released and to flow through you more fully. So it's a beautiful process, and I think that the majority of my healing came through that process of dissolving the ego, and then the physical stuff was kind of complementary to it. So that's my healing story in a nutshell, and after that healing, I went on to create a website for my holistic counseling practice. I also have a master's in counseling, so I use that in the work that I do. But I have written a book about the healing journey, and I've researched so much about healing ulcerative colitis, and I've been able to guide many people through healing their ulcerative colitis. So if you have UC and you're looking for some guidance, contact me. I'm really happy to help guide you through the process in a holistic way. There is so much information to understand about the diet, about ways to help your gut heal. It's all very multifaceted. It's not just one thing, and this is where it's getting really interesting with ulcerative colitis right now, and any digestive issue, is the information about the gut that's coming out is letting us know and see how incredibly complex and interconnected everything in the body is. And I surely don't know everything there is to know, but having gone through this whole process and researched the gut for the last 20 years, I feel like I have that firsthand experience of it all. I kind of know what works and what doesn't work, and the signals that the body give you when things aren't working out. Sometimes there's a healing crisis reaction, which can be confused with when you feel like you're taking something that's bad for you. So I have a lot of experience and expertise in this area, mostly because of my personal experience. So if you are suffering, reach out to me. I offer counseling sessions on a sliding scale, and I'd be really happy to talk with you. All right, blessings.